Hello, my name is Joe and welcome to my channel, Joe's Book and Movie Corner. Today I have another weekly reading report for you. I only have two books to talk about, and the main book is a really good horror novel that I read for Garbaugust called In the Dark by Richard Laymon. It's the second Richard Laymon book I'm reading for Garbaugust this year. But before I talk about that one, I have a sword and sorcery fantasy fix-up novel, Jirel of, I'm going to say Joiry. Jirel of Joiry by C.L. Moore that I'm going to talk about. So if you don't care too much about fantasy or sword and sorcery and just want to skip right ahead to Garbaugust, go ahead, look down in the description and you'll see a timestamp. But you shouldn't skip ahead because this is really good. I really like this. It is, so what is it? C.L. Moore wrote stories for Weird Tales. This is a book that when I was making a huge pile of possibilities TBR for Rocket Summer. This is not science fiction, it's fantasy. But when I was making that list, I came across several authors. I mean, there's in the Weird Tales authors, a lot of them wrote fantasy and science fiction. So I came across C.L. Moore, and I just kind of threw her in there with my broad list of authors that I wanted to check out from kind of golden and the pulp era of science fiction and fantasy. And this is I guess you call it a fix-up. It's not a fix-up novel. It's really just a collection of 6 short stories or novelettes by C.L. Moore about one character, Jirel. And she is the ruler of Joiry. Again, I don't know if I'm saying that right. But she is a ruler in medieval France. And these stories in this book are very dark. They're filled with horror, and they're really strange and weird. I think of the Weird Tales authors. The most popular one, I know, just speaking from experience, I didn't know, maybe 10 years ago, I didn't really know anything about Weird Tales, but the one author that I did know and I did read was H.P. Lovecraft. And I think it's probably safe to say that outside of, if you're not really into booktube, or if you're not into Weird Tales and pulp fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi, you've probably heard of H.P. Lovecraft. You might not have heard of C.L. Moore. I know I certainly didn't 10 years ago. But, I think a lot of people would compare her to the weirdness of H.P. Lovecraft. I think maybe she's a better writer than H.P. Lovecraft. It's been a really long time since I've read him. But yeah, 6 short stories. They're all dark. They're all very strange. There's a heavy horror elements to them. There's one story that also has some science fiction and brings in another character of hers. That was really interesting. But my favorite stories were probably the first one, Black God's Kiss, as well as the final story, Hell's Guard. In that first story, Black God's Kiss, you're immediately hit with the weirdness of these stories. It has to do with, there's a conqueror that has taken over Joiry, and Jirel is in her castle, and she's able, I can't remember, I think she's able to escape the guards, or she has free reign inside her castle, and she goes down into her dungeon, and there's this door where she goes in, and she goes down further, and then there's like this spiral staircase that turns into this weird slide, and it kind of transports her to another dimension. And a lot of these stories have to deal with going off to an alternate realm. It's the setting is low fantasy, so it takes place in the real world, but then she goes into this weird, bizarre other place. And it's very strange. So she has to go into this other world, and she has to retrieve a weapon to come back to her world and defeat this conqueror. And it was really cool. I won't tell you what the weapon is, but when she sees it and she finds it and she has to retrieve it, it's like the visual, what she sees from her perspective when it's standing right in front of her is everything in this world is like pointing towards this thing. And it's like everything was placed here in this world for her to be standing here to get this weapon. And it's really cool. And yeah, it's all these stories are very bizarre, and that one was probably the most strange, I think, for me. Also, the last story, Hell's Guard, I liked a lot. She's on this mission to go into this castle that's supposedly, or it should be, abandoned. It has been sitting there vacant for, I think, maybe 200 years. But when she gets there, there's a family living there, and they're descendants of the previous owner of the castle. And they're very, very creepy. And she's sitting there trying to just stay calm. She's having dinner with them, and as the reader, you're like, are these guys vampires? Are they undead? What are they? They're very, very creepy. So yeah, that story was well done. The only issue I had with it, and this is not really an issue, is I'm finding that with these pulp authors, the ones that are good, I have to slow down a little bit. Their prose is a little bit elevated than kind of what you're used to today in modern fantasy and science fiction, I think. I've said the word with these authors. I don't think they write with purple prose. It's just elevated prose. Every once in a while, you might have to look a word up in a dictionary, and you might just have to slow your pace of reading down. But yeah, if you've read fantasy and science fiction and you're tired of long series, like I like this series, but I call it out a lot. Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's one that I'm currently in the middle of, and I need to get back to it. But my problem with it is that each book just feels like a really big, long chapter. And if you take any time off from the series, as I have, when you jump back into the next book and you've taken a month off or 2 months off, you have no idea what's going on. You've forgotten all the side characters, and it's kind of annoying. So if you're tired of that and you want fantasy that's just short and sweet, I mean, it's only like 200 pages long. Check this out. It's really, really good. Also, if you like grimdark, I mean, this is sword and sorcery. I would also call it dark fantasy, also horror fantasy. All, I think, predecessors to grimdark. So if you like grimdark, check this out. Check out some sword and sorcery. I know I haven't read much sword and sorcery, but after reading this, I definitely want to read more. Good thing is we have Sumerian September, created by Michael K. Vaughan, is going to be starting next month. So I will probably read at least some Conan the Barbarian, and hopefully some more Robert E. Howard next month. But yeah, that was really good. All right, so next up, the main event for this video. I read for Garbaugust Week 2, In the Dark by Richard Laymon. Now, Week 1, I read The Cellar. Week 1 was supposed to be a free-for-all, and I just wanted to pick a shocking, extreme horror book. And then for Week 2, it was pick something that's shocking, either shockingly violent or lots of sexual content. So I just wanted to pick another Richard Laymon book because I didn't actually like The Cellar. I thought it was just objectively bad. I didn't really like it, but I knew that if I picked another Laymon book, and I picked one that was, recommended online, and a lot of people liked it, I'd probably enjoy it. And I liked this a lot. So this story is about a librarian who's kind of a typical librarian. I think she's kind of a younger woman in her 20s, but the typical, a little bit maybe an introverted type, maybe a little bit shy librarian, a stereotypical younger librarian. Just that should put an image in your head of who this person is. So she's working late at night, and she starts receiving these envelopes with money in them. And then there's a little letter written from someone who calls himself the Master of Games, or Mog. And he writes this almost like a little poem that gives her a hint to where the next envelope's going to be. And each time she finds the next envelope, there is twice the amount of money. So it starts out with $50, then 100, then 200, then 400. And the more she finds, it gets really... the prize money starts really getting high and up there. And halfway through the book, this is a Richard Laymon extreme horror book, so halfway through the book, you don't get a lot of the extreme horror. It's just very, very tense. She finds in the library, she meets this guy Brace, who immediately, as the reader, you're like, don't trust that guy. He could be in on it. He's either this master of games or he's in on it. And she doesn't really trust him either, but she immediately kind of falls in love with him. And early on in the book, we come to the first of several scenes that are very, very tense. They're very well done. I kind of hit it out of the park with Jirel of Joiry for horror. Had that great dinner scene in the last story. This book, I don't think I've ever been this tense reading a scene. I mean, when a horror movie freaks me out, it's a good feeling because I love horror. You see a lot of it, you kind of get desensitized to it. But when a book can make you feel tension in a real physical, like I was in bed, like getting tense, it really shocked me how good this scene was. So the first scene that did this, and it's probably the best one, is she's found the first few envelopes. She meets this guy Brace, who may be in on the Master of Games thing. We're not really sure. She doesn't really trust him 100%, but she likes him. And she's taking a shower. She's alone in her house, and she just starts kind of, fantasizing. And then we get a little bit of the Richard Laymon sexuality. And she's fantasizing about this game. It's a relatable situation. You're in the shower, but your mind just kind of wanders. Not necessarily the fantasizing part, but but really, she's in the shower, her mind is wandering, and she's just kind of zoning out, and the book just kind of starts zoning out. You kind of zone out with her. And that's another thing, just on a brief aside, the book is a page turn, it's well-paced, but it takes its time sometimes to slow down and breathe a little bit. So we're getting to know this character. She's kind of thinking about this guy that she likes. And then out of nowhere, she looks and she sees outside of the shower, the door to the bathroom is open. And she knows, I closed the door. I always close the door. Someone is in the house with me. And then that's it. And then she's in the shower and she's like, what do I do? I'm alone. There's someone here. And that scene was, I'm getting like chills just thinking about it. It was so well done. It was really good. And there are several scenes throughout the book that are very similar to that. But the best one's that first one. Now I've mentioned, the sexuality and the character of Jane. I thought Jane overall was a very good character. I am getting the impression, though, with Richard Laymon is you do have to, and this might be a flaw, you have to, I think, actively suspend your disbelief. If we can talk about fantasy for a second, J.R.R. Tolkien, he did not like the idea of suspension of disbelief. The book should do that for you. You should not have to suspend your disbelief. But nevertheless, with Richard Laymon, I think you just have to accept that these characters are going to make decisions that are not necessarily realistic. But it's just, this is a character that makes unrealistic. You just have to accept that they're going to make unrealistic decisions. This character I thought was really good. At first, right in the beginning, she's trusting this guy Brace, but at least she thinks to herself, I shouldn't be trusting this guy. As the book goes on, and this is tied a little bit to the sexuality of her character, you start to realize that she really likes this game. She gets excited by it. She gets excited about having, she has this relationship with this guy Brace, but she also has a relationship with the Master of Games, this unseen figure who also has this seemingly supernatural ability to get into places to leave these envelopes, or maybe even get in her house and leave notes for her in her own home. The character was really, really good. And you almost start to not even trust. The book is written in third person, but it's all through Jane's perspective. You kind of almost start to not really trust her. Again, not as a narrator. She's not an unreliable narrator, but just at her perspective, you don't really trust it. She, for example, she has some body image issues, but everyone tells her, comments on how good looking she is. You see her, at first she's you think she's this waifish librarian character, but actually she's quite tough. And you see her kind of grow into that. So I thought she was a really good character. I'd like to know, by the way, if you've read this, especially if you're a woman reading this woman character written by a man. Is this a good portrayal of a female character? I thought she was. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I'd like to know if you've read this. Let me know in the comments if you like Jane as a character. But yeah, I thought she was really good. And speaking of Moog, does he pick Jane out knowing that she's going to like the games? And she kind of gets off on it. Does he know that? So Moog is obviously very, very mysterious. Also, I should mention the violence of the book. The first half of the book there's not a lot of extreme horror. And then one of the tasks that Moog gives her. He tells her to just go to this place and something's going to happen. It takes a real hard left turn into what you'd expect from an extreme horror book. What she has to do and the danger that she's in just gets cranked up to 11. And then after that, the book just kind of builds, and it has a really great action-packed ending. One slight issue I had with it, and I should briefly talk about something I had a problem I had with The Cellar. And The Cellar, which is about this beast character that eats people. When the main characters realize that this thing is real, they don't really question it. They don't go, well, what is this monster? What is this thing? And there's something similar here. I don't think the characters ask the question enough. Who is this Moog guy? This is getting dangerous. They kind of talk about paying lip service to calling the cops, but if he has the ability to kind of get through places that are secure, like your house, one would think they would start asking, what is this guy? Who is he? How is he doing this? And as the book goes on, I don't think there's enough asking, who is this guy? However, the ending is really good. It's very action-packed. And in the end, and I would argue a little bit before, when the book takes a very hard turn into extreme horror, you do get a sense of that there is a larger story beyond just Jane's game that she's playing with Moog. And so, though I don't think the characters ask the question enough, who is this Moog character? Since you do get some idea of something a little bit broader than the story, I think I don't have a problem with it like I did with The Cellar. With The Cellar, I didn't really get the sense that there was a bigger story than what we're presented with, even though I know that book has several sequels. I could envision a sequel to this book, and there's more going on than just Jane's story. Also, in the ending, there's a really, really good twist ending, and I'm also getting the impression that I think I can expect a twist ending in all of Richard Laymon's books. And I think I've mentioned before, but it's very well paced. It's a page turner, but it also slows down and just breathes. So I think it's about 500 pages. You're going to read it really, really fast, but it does take time to slow down, and you kind of get inside Jane's head. And yeah, once again, she's just kind of an interesting character to read about. So that's it. And I do think that it was a really good book. I did not like the first book I read for Garbaugust, but this one more than made up for it. It was excellent. This is recency bias talking probably, but this might be one of my, in maybe a couple of years, I think this book will stay with me and will probably be one of my favorite horror books. I loved it. I thought it was great. But also, it's Richard Laymon trash, so a perfect fit for Garbaugust. Next week, which is, I've already, once you watch this video, I will have already finished, the next week. No more Garbaugust for me, probably for August. I think it's going to mostly be just science fiction, maybe some more fantasy, and definitely some more book trek. So next week, I have some book trek to talk about. If this is the last Garbaugust book I read this month, I'm probably going to go back to more extreme horror later on this year, because I just like the genre. That's it for Garbaugust, and that is it for me. Thank you.